PPA, the light switch, bill safe. When it comes to this product, you should definitely reference the comments tape on, the comments video on, B, the means and method of holding cash or other valuable items, because I kind of discuss these two being sold as a set on an infomercial, if that's of interest to you. So, because I do think these two products really ought to be kind of sold as a set. That's just kind of how I envisioned them when I put them in here. Because I think both of these are weak enough to where on their own they probably couldn't sell. But combined, I think there's enough cleverness in it to where I do think, the combination could be an okay seller. I mean, it's hard for me to predict, what kind of volume we're talking about, but I think they could be an okay seller. So, and again, I certainly invite you to, do a little bit of, informal test marketing or market research anyway, asking a few people what they think and so forth, and see what you get, because, you need a variety of opinions to get a good statistical idea, ask like 50 or 100 people, what they might think. And again, it doesn't have to be a formal market survey, just, give you an idea, kind of like you guys or Sully would do like pitchmen sometimes, with some of those products, they go do some market surveys. Well, something kind of like that, might be a good idea here. I'm reticent to do it myself because I'm not a good salesman, so you guys are better salesmen. You're still going to know, you need to see exactly what people's feedbacks exactly are on it. It's not going to do me much good to do that kind of thing, because you're the sales force here, not me, and that's not my function here. I'll offer some input and so forth on it. I'd love to see the, if you videoed the market survey, I'd love to see that information, because that can be pretty insightful on things like that. However, the fact of the matter is still you're the one that really needs to learn the information. So, but like I said, since it can be informal, it doesn't have to really cost much. So, to go out and do that kind of thing. So, I think we got enough novel features in this thing, coupled with the, the plating on it, that doesn't allow, people's fingers to come anywhere near any electrical wiring or anything like that. I think it works well enough to where most customers, most consumers seeing it on TV, would go for it, because, it really does do its job, in terms of sprucing up that rather ugly area behind a light switch plate, that otherwise is very handy for hiding things like this. And that's what makes this extra effective, too. You have that little bill safe. It's a plug. The thing is, it's not a working plug. You can't even plug anything into it, as far as I know. So, a criminal, could definitely be wise to that, whereas a working light switch, in general, until they become really aware of this, they're not gonna know that somebody's really storing valuables back there. Now, of course, that might cause a rash of criminals going around ripping light plates off of people's houses everywhere. But hell, at least they're easy enough to replace. But then again, at the end of the day, chances are, that takes time. And when a criminal's breaking into somebody's house, the more time they spend looking for things like that, the more likely it is they're going to get caught. So, time's an issue, particularly if there's an alarm involved. A silent alarm or a non-silent alarm going off. The cops will get there eventually. So, if you have to, slow them down by tearing all the light switch plates off in the house and pulling out every frickin' drawer and looking underneath of it and looking under every table and for the cash stash, for example, looking for that too. Chances are far better they're going to get caught. So, might put a lot more of these criminals behind bars because of this, because it's just a matter of slowing them down enough, and the point is, you can slow them down enough, well, every second counts. So, at the end of the day, I mean, it could actually stop crime, even if criminals did, start getting wise to it. That's still a lot more places they definitely feel compelled to look now. And like the cash stash, like I said, that can be put on walls and, like walls in your closet and other hidden places, not just under tables. So, at the end of the day, they can go ahead and put behind your stove, behind your refrigerator, there's lots of different places you could put that thing. On the inside of cabinets, like for example in the kitchen, instead of putting it under your kitchen drawer, you could actually make it so you have to pull the drawer out and the thing's actually stuck to the underside of your cabinet, the underside of your countertop. So, instead of under the drawer, which would be a less likely place for somebody to look. There's a lot of clever places, if you think about it, you can actually put something like this. So, in a typical house, you can put it on the back of your toilet tank, that's another good place. And again, with the adhesive I use, it'll stick to just about anything, under almost any temperature conditions, too. That's what I really like about this hem tape. For the cash stash. I mean, again, this is more of a cash stash video, but these two are so related, I don't mind discussing them intimately on the relevant associated videos. Intimately and interchangeably, I should say. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different places, you could potentially hide that cash stash, but it's a matter of being clever, and it's one of those types of things that, it's better to put that kind of information like in a booklet or something. So somebody have to actually buy one, to read up on it. And a criminal is not likely to buy something like this because if they're selling it on a commercial, well, they get it. They'd understand what it's for and what to look for. They don't need to buy one to try to work out how to defeat it because it's not an actual lock mechanism or anything, in the bill safe or the cash stash. I think I called the bill safe, by the way, the cash crevice, it's an alternate name. So, that might be a catchy name for it, But, the point is that, like I said, the more products you have like this, the more they can sell. And the point is, it's just a matter of, and in fact, if you did go with this and try to run a commercial on it, well, if your first commercial, the keep your lips closed about the issue didn't work, so well, let's say the sales volume was lackluster, like let's say you did the commercial selling both of these products and you kind of talk about them both interchangeably in the video, which is what I'd recommend. I don't think you ought to look at one as being a bonus product to the other. I think basically the commercial ought to consist of equal parts of both pretty much as necessary. But I think if you did that, your bonus product could be like one of those little iodine markers or something so you can test if somebody's giving you fake money or not. Because, I always thought that would be funny. You go to a store and they test every dollar, that you give them, when you give them a 20 or something like that, they got to take their little marker out. It would be funny to do the same to them, grab their cash and, bring your own marker and try and test it from them to insult them for a little bit. At any rate, that could be your bonus product, a little iodine marker or something to test cash with. So, but the main two units probably ought to be sold, again, really as one commercial, advertising both products and the combinational use of both products. But at any rate, let's say you just did that and, did it at face value, which is how I would instinctively first do it. I wouldn't want to mention any negatives to it. But if the sales weren't very good, from your initial commercial run, you might want to try an alternative commercial that does discuss the theory behind it a little bit. That, hey, the whole point is to delay criminals. The more a criminal is delayed, if they break into your house trying to look for things like this, the more likely it is they're going to be caught, And, if you explain that logic, it's just a little bit of a Hail Mary, but if you explain that logic, you might actually see a sales bump over it. Just maybe, because sometimes you can talk rationale and to the masses if it's in a way they can understand it. readily, quickly and readily. So anyway, that would be kind of my marketing advice on it if you wanted to take it up. But the nice thing about these two products is they're both fairly cheap to tool up on. And they both are fairly cheap. I mean, these are not really expensive from a tooling standpoint, although Cash Stash, does have, a few parts there to, to have injection molded or what have you, depending on how you want to go about manufacturing it. But probably, like I said, 3 injection molded parts, and then you got the magnet sheet, so it's a little manual assembly involved. Since 2 of those parts may need to be glued together, again, unless you guys do it differently than what I have depicted here. But the cash crevice, the light switch bill safe, is, much simpler. I mean, 'cause that could be a single mold, except that you got the little cups, so that'd be 2 molds, but still, it can be done, as 2 parts in the same mold, probably. Then you got the little metal strips or whatever, but that's, easy enough. But like I said, you're not really talking about a lot of money here. Although I still say in that bill safe, I still, would like design modifications, thin enough materials or something on the tops and bottoms of that cash crevice, so you can fit credit cards in there, at least in some of the deeper switches. And that's one of the drawbacks to it, is that there are at least 2 different depths of light switch box that people may have out there. The shallow depth box and then the deeper boxes. One of the newer boxes tend to be deeper, but again, there still are a lot of metal boxes out there that would only accommodate the shallower switches, so customers would have to choose their order on one to begin with, or you could just sell nothing but the shallow box that would fit in any plate, but that's going to hold less cash, and certainly credit cards would be totally out of the question in that. But the nice thing about the certainly the deeper version too is that that little tub could also hold like a diamond necklace or something like that, as long as it wasn't too bulky. Certainly some diamond rings and things like that. It doesn't have to just be cash. So, it can store other valuables as well. And you don't have to use the cup at all if you don't want to. And, with a deeper box, if you don't use the cup, you might be able to squeeze a credit card in there, but the slope backing, might be a bit of an issue. It's got those little slopes, chamfered corners on the rear of it, because most boxes have chamfered wire inlets on the back of them. So, it's certainly, not a perfect product. It's got issues, but, like I said, I'd sell them in packs of 3 or 4. Don't try to sell like a whole house pack, because chances are pretty good if you sell 3 or 4 of them, they'll find a light switch somewhere in their house that it'll work with. In fact, you could sell a mixture, 2 shallow ones and 2 deep ones, or something like that, to actually make the production a little more sensible, so the customers didn't have to necessarily choose when they ordered. They just have to, buy the set and they get both types. But still, I don't think the tooling would be all that expensive on it overall for both of the products combined. So, again, it's one of those things that, could pay off fairly good. And if nothing else, you can always do what I was thinking of doing with it and selling it to Ace Hardware, because I think especially that cash crevice would work pretty well on Ace Hardware if they just put it in their electrical section or something, because, or Home Depot even might be interested in having something like that. Their security section is usually closely located next to their, light switches and stuff. But I can see this actually being sold like in Home Depot in the light switch area. I can see one being demonstrated on their little, light switch area. That would help sell pretty well. But, the cash crevice, though, the Cash Stash, I don't know what secondary company I'd have to sell that through. Again, it'd probably work better in a catalog than Home Depot or someplace. I don't see that being sold in Home Depot. Although it could be. It's not out of the question. It's just, It doesn't take up a lot of shelf space. I can see that being blister packed in on a cardboard backing and hanging on one of those little rack things. Doesn't have to take up a lot of space. Because it's quite flat. But, so certainly for certain areas of retail it could work. I mean, it could probably work in, I don't know, Walmart or something. As another option. So anyway, there's a possibility for, either reselling the patent, or if you acquired the IP, there'd be a possibility of reselling the patent or licensing it or some secondary sales. Now, of course, if I own the patent, well, then that would be kind of my prerogative, to license or, sell it. But again, since, especially on this first run, you're going to have to pay for any patent costs up front anyway. There's no way I can afford it. If you're paying for something, it kind of makes sense for you to own it. You know what I'm saying? And I just assume you buy it, because it's certainly not going to save you any money to say, oh, I'm just licensing it, because I'm not, I'm free to say I'm just licensing it. I'm not going to pay for the patent, because that's not going to work. Because then it's not going to get patented, and that's unacceptable to me. So, and at the end of the day, like I said, since I don't have the budget to patent it myself, that's not going to happen. And even if I did, I'd charge more for it. I'd certainly at least always more than recoup my patent cost. Any sales price that I'm going to give you, that's the bottom line. This isn't a fire sale, in that sense. I'm not stuck with a lot of excess inventory, and I do have a lot of IP to sell, but I'm not going to sell below cost. So, at the end of the day, but like I said, I don't know what patents run these days. I mean, again, I know back in 2002, we were looking at $5,000. That's what I spent. But, but of course that didn't include the publication fee. But the fact of the matter is, though, is that, that was to pay an attorney to do it, and I'm certainly going to do that. But in this day and age, I don't know. I know prices have probably gone up, and then you got the patent search. But then again, you should be the one that does the patent search, but you got to make your patents available. But that'll certainly save me some money on that. So, if I do patent, that'll lower your attorney's fee. Maybe we can get a lot of these done for, $7,000 or so, because I'm sure prices have gone up. Since then, since 2002 with attorneys, everything else has gone up. It could be double that. I don't know, double what it was in 2002 anyway. I don't know. Because again, most of your patents, I'd certainly go through a cheap attorney on, and if you want to go through a good attorney, well, you should patent it. So, again, there are a few products that I'm going to have in some of these videos, though, that should be well patented. In other words, don't go through the cheapest attorneys. Some of the staple products like UFL and so forth really should be patented well. That's why I really strongly, would recommend maybe you hiring an attorney and, spending as much as you want to, but, any product like that could be a staple product and last the full 20 years is worth patenting well. Don't go for the cheapest attorney, and if I do it, I'm still going to have to reflect that cost. And me, I don't know, really what the difference between cheaper attorneys are and more expensive attorneys are as far as who to talk to, except that I know I can go to the best law firm in town, and that'll set me back a lot of money. Plus, spend $50,000 trying to patent the UFL or more, going through. Going through some of the big ones, like Hall Estill, for example, is here in town. They're the best IP law firm in town, but they are expensive. They got a big reputation, and they they charge for it. I'm sure they probably do handle patents, for such a big IP law firm. I'm sure that would not be cheap going through them, especially on something as complex as UFL. although some aspects of UFL could be patented through a cheaper attorney and other aspects could be patented through the more expensive attorneys. But the UFL is an example of a product that will generate multiple patents. In all likelihood, one patent is not likely to cover it all. So, as far as that selling block is concerned, so, which I'll discuss more about that, in the UFL videos. But anyway, with a product like this, normally you'd have to get it UL approved. But what UL is going to be looking for is whether it's flammable or not. So honestly, that's the sole amount of liability here. If you just make the thing out of like PVC or something like that, something that if there's a spark inside the electrical box or something like that, it won't catch on fire. That's the only thing you have to worry about. Otherwise, plastics are non-conductive. So, but if you use something like polyethylene or something like that, that's a big no-no. Because polyethylene, if it catches on fire for some reason, it actually turns to liquid. It's like napalm. And it will, like if, let's say this thing was made out of polyethylene, and pretty much any grade of polyethylene, be it high density, medium density, UHMW, whatever, it will turn to something that's just like gasoline that's on fire. That's how fluid it is. And it will literally go down inside the wall, inside the box, and outside the wall. Maybe a small quantity, it could be enough to actually catch the house on fire, particularly if there's a carpet or drapes or something by it. So anyway, it's not something you want to take a chance with. Just make sure it's non-flammable. Polyethylene could be used if it had sufficient flame retardancy in it, to bring up to 94V1 at least, and maybe VO. I don't know what the requirements are on electrical apparatus like that for sure, but but any plastics with sufficient fire retardants in it will do the trick. But again, it's really going to boil down to its, how much of a fire hazard it is, and that's where the liability is. So again, if you can just make sure that you don't have, any chance of the thing catching on fire, due to catching a spark, you're going to be okay at PVC. What's nice about it, although, it can be a bit of a pain to extrude or to injection mold because it does tend to char, so different manufacturers have different takes on that. It tends to char in their, in their extruder sometimes. But still, there's a good chance they can make it out of PVC, and if they can, PVC is naturally flame retardant. So it's a naturally 94VO rated material. One of the nice things about it, it's fairly cheap and naturally flame resistant. The only thing it does is produce noxious fumes if you heat it up, or catch it on fire, but it really will not ignite. So it's not something you can actually burn. It can be burnt and charred, but it won't actually catch fire. So, but anyway, and the same thing could be said for, the light switch clip plate, section D as well.